We are not doctors. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as medical advice. Consult your physician before starting any workout routine. This is the Martial Heart Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back on for those on YouTube. Good to see you. I am here still, and I moved some things around in the background. Don't know if that makes any difference. Probably going to make some more changes. My backdrop was just kind of boring, so other than building fancy sets and shit like that, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, put some things back there, rearrange the room a little bit. So a little bit of an update from this morning compared to the last couple of days, or well, the last few weeks. One of the worst things about my recovery so far has been the extreme nausea that I feel after taking these medicines throughout the day. So this morning I was busy doing some things. You know, my little alarm reminder went off and said, take your medicine. So I took the medicine and I kept doing what I was doing. I didn't stop and eat, which is what I had been doing lately. I thought it would be better if I ate something while I was taking the medicines. Apparently, that's not true. Because this morning, I forgot to eat because I was in the middle of something, so I didn't eat for an hour and a half. And when I did eat something, I thought, wait, I haven't had the nausea yet. It hasn't really hit me the way it did before. So I may have found a solution. At least a partial solution. And that is, don't eat with this medicine. Either eat later. I'm going to try eating before and see what happens, like an hour before. And then I'm going to experiment with eating an hour after or so and see how that affects the nausea. Because other than the nagging chest pressure that I've had, that hopefully goes away. But other than that, the nausea has been the most difficult part as far as how you feel. It's been the nausea and the dizziness. So hopefully those things will eventually work themselves out. But I may have found a workaround for at least some of the nausea. I still feel a little nauseous, but not extremely like I have been the last few weeks. So another positive note in heart health is Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin is a safety with the Buffalo Bills, and he is starting today in their football game this weekend. It's the Buffalo Bills are playing, and he is going to be the starting safety for the team. Not that big of a deal, probably, to most people. Hey, he's a pro football player. He's starting, so what? Well, about a year and a half ago, he had a cardiac arrest in the middle of a Monday night football game on television. Just collapsed, fell on the ground. They did CPR. They had to hit him with an AED and bring him back and get a heartbeat back from him. He was in intensive care for several days. And he apparently has made a full recovery. I think this is the first time he's going to be a starter again since this incident happened. He's been on the team the whole time. He's been recovering, but I think this may be the first time that he's been cleared. He, apparently got cleared before this season started that he can start playing again. And now he's going to be the starter for this game. I don't know if that's how it's going to be for the whole season, or if they're just try this out this one time. But kudos to him for his recovery and being able to get back out on the football field to play. Now, what happened to Mr. Hamlin was not your typical heart attack. It was cardiac arrest, which sometimes I mean just like lay people who are not doctors and not cardiologists. Sometimes we use those terms almost interchangeably, and they aren't the same thing. I had a heart attack, and that means that your blood flow to your heart gets cut off or severely restricted, and your heart begins to fail because it can't pump any blood and it's losing oxygen. So cardiac arrest means your heart just stops beating for whatever reason. Like my heart attack, my heart was slowing way down, but it didn't stop beating. So I was being deprived of oxygen to my brain, and that was causing me to, be dizzy and all the other symptoms that were happening at the time and the chest pain. Let me explain something about arteries and blood flow to people who haven't experienced it, because it's misleading and it often gets confused as other things. So let me explain a little bit first about my peripheral artery disease. Now, your peripheral artery comes down from your heart, down through the center of your body, and feeds your lower body. So that's your femoral arteries and all of that other stuff down there. And it basically comes down through your pelvis and then splits off. You have, one into each leg and things like that. So during karate classes, I would start to feel a tingling and a numbness in my little toe on my right foot. And then if I stopped and just kind of shook it, it went away and everything was fine. So that progressed until a couple of toes would go numb. And then all of my toes would go numb. And if I didn't stop then, my whole foot would go numb. And if I didn't stop the physical activity, if I kept going, eventually my whole leg would start to feel like, what they call going to sleep, like my leg went to sleep. So it would go numb. And at the time, I was also having a lot of hip pain and sciatic issues. So all of these symptoms also happen when you have severe sciatica. You're pinching, you're touching nerves in there. Things are getting impinged, or however you want to describe it. So it got written off as, hey, you're having sciatica. We need to put you on this stretching program, and we're going to put you on this physical therapy thing to see if it helps you. We have these specialists who are going to take care of this, and they're going to teach you exactly how to manage your sciatica. Well, I went through the physical therapy, and it just continued to get worse, because that wasn't the problem. The problem was that the blood flow to my right leg was being cut off. And it wasn't until after they ruled everything else out, after they did an x-ray, after they did an MRI, and after they did all these other things, they finally decided maybe we're going to do what's called it's a Doppler, arterial Doppler, where they put you on a bed and they put blood pressure cuffs all over you, and this machine just randomly takes your blood pressure in different parts of your body throughout this whole test, and it tells them if you have restricted blood flow into certain parts of your body. And they decided, yes, you do. So they did that, and then they did a CT scan with contrast so that they could see the arteries in my lower half. And they found that I had some severe restriction in quite a few places, and that my femoral artery in my right leg had was completely blocked. And arteries and veins around inside my right thigh had already found a pathway around the blockage in my femoral artery. So it had been that way for a long time. The doctor said that's not something that just happened recently. It's something that happened a long time ago, because your body has already corrected it and found a way to get around it. So that doesn't happen quickly. That happens over a period of years. So we have no idea when that happened. I don't recall ever having issues with my right leg, with my thigh, or anything. So what it feels like when a part of your body is fighting for oxygen is it hurts, because it's trying to work, but it's not getting enough blood to work. It's not getting enough circulation to work correctly, and so it hurts. So a lot of my hip pain was being caused because the arteries and the veins and everything that feed my hip were also being blocked. They were being severely restricted. So what they wound up doing was they found all of these blockages and restrictions and went in and opened them up and put stents in. And that took care of a lot of that. So it's the same thing with your heart. So the blood flow into the heart gets restricted or gets blocked or whatever that is. The chest pain, the severe chest pain and stuff, at least my understanding of what was happening was your heart starts cramping because it's not getting any oxygen and it's trying to work and it can't. So it's kind of similar to what was happening to my hip, where it was screaming out because it needed oxygen it wasn't getting. And so it's kind of, it's seized up. So the same thing starts happening to your heart. But that is a heart attack. And, they come in varying levels of severity. Sometimes it's going to block and completely stop your heart, stop the blood flow to your heart, and then your heart essentially stops working. But it's still a heart attack. It's not just a cardiac arrest where it just stops. It's, gets restricted and then it runs out of oxygen and you slowly die, I guess. So cardiac arrest is what my friend Ed actually suffered. It's just your heart just stops, and his heart just stopped. And it took them a long time to figure out how to keep him alive because they kept having to zap him. But what happened to Hamlin is called commotio cordis. And some of us, especially people involved in the martial arts, have heard these myths about, well, if you hit someone in the chest right at the exact right time, you can stop their heart and they'll die. And it's part of the whole bullshito, thing. There's a lot of the myths and legends around martial arts are just nothing but made up bullshit that, I don't know how it even got popularized. But in this case, this thing is real. And you have to take a severe blunt force trauma to the chest at an exact moment in time. In fact, it has to be a 40 millisecond span of time because it has to occur during a specific section of the heart's rhythm in order for it to, basically, you're just punching your heart out, knocking it out, and it stops. So then they have to bring it back. They have to get it, beating again. So this thing, commotio cordis, it's a real thing. And so that myth about, the death punch or whatever, the 5-finger death punch right into the chest, it can actually be true, but, it's probably going to take a little more than a simple punch. But in Hamlin's case, it took him tackling someone else. But when they went down, that person's shoulder went into his chest and it created the blunt force trauma. And he tackled him, got up, took a couple of steps, and then collapsed because at the time of that impact, his heart had stopped beating. So he no longer had blood flowing, no longer had oxygen to his brain or any of his extremities. Everything just stopped, and he went down, and that was it. And it's 97% of the time, from what I've read, it's fatal. So he was incredibly lucky that he had state-of-the-art medical equipment there on site and medical personnel who knew how to deal with it and were able to keep him alive and get him into the hospital and into intensive care. And look at him now. He's going to be starting as the safety for the Buffalo Bills today. So kudos to him. Best of luck. I hope it just continues that way and that, he has made a full recovery. But it can be encouraging because it's just like the soccer player who plays with a pacemaker. A lot of people think you have this severe medical situation that occurred. You're done. You're just going to be lounging around for the rest of your life. You're going to have to live on long-term disability or go out on Social Security, and you're just going to be piddling around in a garden and shuffling, in your house slippers to go get the mail every day. And that's just not necessarily true. Sometimes you can make a full recovery and get right back to what you were doing before. And in our case, hopefully, it's martial arts. So with that, we're going to call this one done and put this outro music on. And, I'll talk to you next time. Keep an eye out for a couple of new podcast ideas that I've got. And until then, take care of yourself and your family.